You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parsons, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on Twitter at DP_NFL. And of course, I got my partner, my guy, my brother, Mr. LSU, 2019 National Champion, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on Twitter at TheTalentCode. Keith, talk to him, baby.
DP, what's going on, man? What's going on to our everydayers, man? Y'all know how it is each and every Saturday for Keith Sanchez, man. Like I say, DP, it's Saturday. We talking football. Life is good. It is what it should be, man. We are back at it, man, after taking a 2-week situation. We had to take care of some things, revamp, go to halftime, right? Come back out, adjust, and then kill a second half, man. This thing is all about second half adjustments. And DP, for today's slate, man, we're getting to three games that's going to have a lot of I guess weights and bearings, right, as far as who's going to be in a college football playoff. A lot of fun discussion, DP. We're going to take this thing at the very top with the Penn State versus Michigan matchup. But we're going to talk about Michigan first, right, because we have some breaking news, right, and news consistently is breaking with Michigan. First of all, Jim Harbaugh was suspended. We all know the you don't want to call it Spygate, right? But the signal calling gate. Then he was suspended yesterday, right? And then there was a follow-up. And I think Michigan ADDP, he kind of gave me the vibe of, you know, he told the Big Ten, tread lightly, right? Mm-hmm. When he released that statement, you know, basically saying, like, we have some stuff that we can talk about too. And he told them tread lightly. And then the 3-game suspension came out. But then now I believe they tried to appeal it. They tried to appeal
like
it, but
he temporary restraining order.
Yeah, and to try to put in a temporary restraining order, injunction, those things like that. Look, we're not lawyers, right? We're just trying to figure this thing out. But, man, I want to get into the effect, DP, that you think that Jim Harbaugh's suspension could have on his team, the players, the outcome. Could him not being there affect the game in a negative way? Could it affect it in a positive way? How do you rally the troops, right? Because all of this stuff, he was already suspended at the beginning of the season, I believe, right? And then you come back and you talk about the last 3 games. Like, what's the mentality that you believe that the coaches should have, that the fan base should have, right? That the players should have heading into this big-time matchup against Penn State?
I do think it could have a negative effect because with Jim Harbaugh, tenured head coach that done a lot of things from college football to the NFL, back to college football. You're talking about being able to work and deal with the refs and, you know, different things like that. Like, I think it's Sharon Moore, who's I think is the offense coordinator. He's supposed to be the guy as the temporary head coach. So it's like, that's a different ball game from him. You know what I mean? Where, especially in a big game. Now, the impact I do think is going to have overall, Keith, I think when we talked about it on yesterday's actual podcast, when we did make a statement, you brought up JJ McCarthy. And we got to that conversation. And what did I keep? I brought up the New England Patriots. You said Spygate. That situation with the Patriots brought those guys out that following year, after the offseason, after the ridicule, and they dominated. And I think this is a game where J.J. McCarthy comes out here. I know Chop Robinson, who we'll get into Penn State in a little bit. He's healthy. He's back. So you're talking about them having their full-fledged pass rushers for Penn State. Blake Corum, those guys got off the bus looking pissed off, Keith. They got off the bus looking angry. So it's like seeing that kind of, and they're wearing the beanies, Michigan versus everybody. I think that this is a game where they come out as a team to make a statement. And I think that this statement, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really feel good about Penn State right now. Like, you know what I mean? Because if this situation wasn't happening, if it did never happen, I feel like this could be a game that could maybe go either way. If Drew Aller could get the passing game going, things of that nature. But I think Michigan's going to come out to be physical, to be violent and aggressive.
There's no element of being able to catch Michigan sleepwalking anymore, right? Like they removed that because of, you know, all of the allegations. And DP, I want to start from the very top, right? With the whole sign stealing and signal stealing. I'll be completely honest. I think the Big Ten, they listen to media pressure, they listen to social media pressure, they listen to other teams' pressure, because I don't feel like I've seen enough evidence, right, to be able, like, hey, we know that they definitely did X, Y, and Z, and Jim Harbaugh was directly involved in it, right? And then they say that the statement was ridiculous, right? The statement was Yeah, we don't know that Harbaugh was directly affiliated with it, but we're going to punish him because the university deserves to be punished. What does that mean, DP? Like, how do you interpret that, right? Like, what does that mean? That confused me from the very beginning.
I'm trying to please everybody else, but not piss y'all off too much. Like,
that's exactly what that was, DP. And I don't know how much they're gonna find, right? Because you talk about Spygate. We seen with Spygate that the NFL, I think it was bad enough, DP. The NFL deleted the tapes, right? They said, you know what, we're not gonna release this. We're gonna get rid of these tapes. But so with that being the case, and them feeling unfairly punished and criticized in the media, right? That I think that these players are going to come out motivated. They're going to come out with a chip on the shoulder, and it could have went either way. DP, you could have went with the situation of, oh man, we feel bad for ourselves, so we're going to come out there, kind of halfway, and we kind of lumber some out there. But no, I think they're coming out there swinging, DP. And we seen Penn State against Ohio State, right? And I think defensively, maybe Ohio State has bigger names. But I think as a collective unit, this Michigan defense is just as dominant. So I don't know if Penn State is going to be able to take that next step, right, as far as being able to score a lot of points, because they wasn't able to do it against Penn State. Now, what Ohio State has, what Michigan has, in my opinion, is a top 5 quarterback, right, in JJ McCarthy. And in fact, if they unrelease JJ McCarthy and let him throw the ball down the field and show why that he could be quarterback 3 in this NFL draft, are they gonna put up 30 points right now? And I'm not sure that it could be a close game. So a motivated Michigan team, DP, with you talking about the OC being the head coach, and if they're going out there to make a statement that, you know what, we don't need these plays. And I think that's the scary part about it from Penn State perspective, because I don't know if there's going to be a level of take your foot off the gas, right, if this thing gets ugly, because Michigan is now trying to make a statement that we didn't need a cheat to beat y'all, right? Like now you got the Rutgers and the Michigan States and the Indiana saying,
like what are we doing? Like, they didn't need to steal your signs to beat y'all. That.
But that's what they're saying, right? That's what the other teams are saying. Like, man, that's why you beat me 40-0, because you were stealing my signs. And it's like, all right, let me show you, right? And so I think this is a perfect, if this is a make a statement game, this is a let me show you game, how talented we are. And I want to talk about, now that we got that part out the way, DP, do what we do on this Locked On NFL Draft podcast, right? It's like, let's transition. Let's go to the prospects, right? Like we talk about how talented this Michigan team is in your region. So I'm going to let you go ahead and kick that off, whether you want to kick it with the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball. Kick this off and why we believe this matchup is going to be what it's going to be.
Yeah, I want to start with the defense, man. Like they have guys. They're not like the most well-known group, right? Because everybody knows that they're a really talented defense, but the household names, you know what I mean? Where it's not Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, and those type of guys, but big Chris Jenkins. One thing about Penn State, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, 2 very talented sophomore runners, physical, explosive, downhill guys. And of course, Nick Singleton has more of the deep end speed, the big play speed out of those 2. Chris Jenkins on the middle of that defense. He can play that 5 tech when they go to kind of an odd front, kick him out at D end, right? He can also play the 0, 1, or 2-eye as well, technique, and really stuff the run. Like, I was watching some tape on him last night, and once I got back home from the jump park, which I don't even know how I was still awake. After that whole ordeal, you know what I'm saying? But like, just watching him be able to stack, right, peak, shed, like control offensive lineman. He's heavy-handed. He's got good arm length, and he's very physical and powerful at the point of attack. And that allows that second level of like Michael Barrett. Think about in the back end in the secondary with Rod Moore and the different guys they have. And they have a lot of pass rushers. Kenneth Grant on the defense line. That's a big, more of a big. I think he's like their nose tackle. Big dude, can really be physical at the point of attack as well. When they want to kick Chris Jenkins, the 5 tech, they'll put. I think it's Kenneth Grant. They'll put him. At the nose tackle on those offense. Yeah, he's 6'3", 339, almost 340, right? But Braden McGregor, number 17, a guy that I like coming off the edge. He can win, and he has a nice pass rush win rate. But also Jalen Harrell. Jalen Harrell is one of their best pass rushers as well. They just rotate a lot of guys, man. Like, they don't really give you an opportunity to just game plan to take away one dude as a pass rusher. And I think with Chris Jenkins and Grant and this D line, They take away that run game. Now we get to see Drew Aller drop back 30+ times against this kind of versatile pass rush. They will blitz you. They have corners, man. Will Johnson's probably Patrick Surtain. Even though Patrick Surtain is Patrick Surtain the second, he's probably the third. Like his game is very similar to PS2, who plays for the Denver Broncos, but he's not eligible until 2025. But man, this defense in general has a lot of names, a lot of different playmakers. But this is a game where I think that they're going to be able to control the game from start to finish.
Yeah, and to continue that back end DP, you talked about one linebacker, well, kind of edge rusher, Jalen Harrell, right? There's also Junior Colson, who's a high-level football player that nobody's talking about, but his name will appear.
Josiah
right?
Stewart, I forgot about him. He's a transfer from Coastal, from the Sun Belt. Very talented kid. More of a pass rusher. His arms are a little bit on the shorter side, but he's got a nice little twitch to him. He give you some pop. He's not the greatest run defender, but I think on those third and longs, when they start subbing them in freshly, they just keep fresh legs, man. Like they just keep fresh legs across the entire D line.
Yeah,
and that's a nightmare for offense.
Right? I forgot about safety Rod Moore also too, who's a potential top 100 prospect. So yeah, we're talking about this. This defense is not as, like you said, it doesn't have the same household names as the Ohio State defense,
star-studded,
but some high-level players, right? These guys are going to be drafted come 2024, 2025 NFL draft. DP, talking about the Penn State side, and then we're going to key in on one guy because I think it's very important for one guy, DP, and that is Olu Fashanu, right? In the offensive tackle for Penn State. Going in the way a lot of people's offensive tackle won, right? But you talked about a little bit on the podcast, you know, when he was able to go against JT and Jack Sawyer and things like that. I don't want to say struggles, right? But some things appeared, right? That you're like, okay, I want to see if you can kind of get this under control. So with the Olu Fashanu conversation, DP, when you watch him, what are you looking for?
I'm just looking for a clean game, start to finish, right? He did have some peaks and valleys versus Ohio State and JT, and I think he handled himself well against Jack Sawyer, but JT in the wee moments of that game, late in that game, was able to generate more than enough pressure. Like he's able to drive him back, walk him back into the hip, into the lap of the quarterback. And that's not what you want from your blindside protector for a right-handed quarterback. And Drew Aller he's not a dynamic athlete, right? I think he's he's an adequate athlete in terms of being able to get out of the pocket and things like that. But he wants to live in the pocket. He wants to work within the tackle box and be a pocket passer. Olu, this is a game for you because, like you said, you're probably going to see Braden McGregor. You're going to see Jalen Harrell. You're going to see all these different guys that they have, right? When they send blitzes, Mike, think about Mike Hilton with the Pittsburgh. No, he's with the Cincinnati Bengals. He was with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have a Mike. They have their own Mike on Michigan. Mike Sanstrell, former wide receiver. They will blitz him from that nickel spot. They will send extra guys off the left-hand side of the left tackle side to create havoc for them mentally. Okay, who do I pick up? Do I let the edge rusher go, or do I try to get out here to this nickel? So for him, it's just all about keying in, communicating with his offensive lineman, picking the right guy, but also technique, man. His technique, he's an inside hand puncher at times. That's not always the best thing. He's got to punch with the right hand. Start with the outside hand. Keep the inside hand as your recovery hand. Because if you shoot with the recovery hand and they went inside track, there is no recovery for you. Because he's a freak athlete, Keith. Even when he's beat around the edge, this dude can flip his hips and run you right around the arc without a problem. So that's why shooting with the outside hand is so much more important than, the way he's doing things. So for him, I just need to see him be clean with his technique and with his process. Because what I saw on tape versus Ohio State, that forklift, the low hand carriage, trying to bring him up every time, it's just like a wide receiver at the line of scrimmage, Keith. If you get out there in that track stance with your hands down, you ain't protecting yourself, these DBs they'll shoot their hands first, get their hands on you, and control your rep. You want to put yourself in the track stance, hands up, in the boxing stance. I mean, get your hands up, protect yourself. And I want to see that from Olu Fashanu today. You're a mute.
Yeah, I just seen that the mute came through for me, man. Hit the mute button. I had the mute button. But I want to ask about game prediction. Who we think is going to win? Real quick. Penn State, Michigan. Who you going with, DP?
Oh, Michigan. I think Michigan wins by 2 touchdowns or more.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think Penn State has the offensive firepower. And I like Penn State too. I do believe they're a top 10, top 15 team. They got to figure out their offensive situation. They have to.
They got to get the passing game going. They got tight ends that they can't really get going. They got to get them going today.
Yeah, it won't work against the high level team. They're gonna simply outscore you, right? But DP, let's keep this thing going. Let's keep it flowing. We have another SEC matchup, DP, that has playoff implications, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have Ole Miss versus Georgia. And DP, we just finished this thing off, right? We finished the last segment with the game predictions. I'm gonna start this segment off with a game prediction.
Mm-hmm.
If there's an upset pick of the week, I'm going with this as my upset, DP. I'm going with Ole Miss versus Georgia. I'm going with this as my upset, and here's why. Missouri brought them to the brink, DP. Missouri challenged it, and we kept talking about this Georgia defense not being the same defense. I do not think this is the same exact defense that we've seen. They're talented, but at different places, right? But I don't know if they have the same type of difference makers along the defensive line, or if they're ready to take that next step, right? I think there's a gap, when you start getting into the Michael Williams and those type of players, right? So I'm gonna say this. I believe in the Lane Train, baby. Lane Kiffin, Lane Train. He had his own set of issues that we're not going to even get into this week, right? But I think he comes out motivated. He's gonna be able to dial some things up. We talked about quarterback Jackson Dart has to show up, right? Like every single game last year, big game, you played subpar. I need to show the maturity. I brought in Spencer Sanders to challenge you. I hope that he was able to elevate your play, right? Like elevate who you are as a prospect. And it's for these big time games. I think about them versus LSU last year. They had a 10, 17 point lead. They lost it, right? Then a couple other games. I think it was the Bama game, right? Came up the subpar. So you cannot do that in this game. And I'm actually going to pick Ole Miss for the upset to kind of shake some things up in the SEC, because I think the offensive firepower is enough. There's enough there. We've seen enough for the past couple of years, and we've seen Georgia defense this year, right, to be able to pick Ole Miss in this game.
No, I like that pick. I'm also picking Georgia myself as well, and I think the reason why, Keith, is when you look at
Ole Miss or Georgia.
No, I'm Ole Miss. I'm sorry, I'm going with Ole Miss as well.
Okay, we doubling down on the upset.
Yeah, we doubling down on Ole Miss, man. Because I'm with you. Because last week Luther Burden gave them issues, right? Yep. And this is a team in like. Missouri was a dangerous team. But when I look at if Ole Miss is rolling, Keith, and I'm looking at the numbers here. Ole Miss has three receivers over 600 yards apiece. So that means if Jackson Dart is playing high level, if he's playing complete football, right? We also know he's got a big arm. He's also mobile. So if he starts getting the ball to all these guys, and the number one wide receiver on this team, Trey Harris, a guy who we talked about recently on the Stock Up segment on one of our recent Monday shows, his stock is up 6'2", 205, 210 pounds, can really work the vertical plane of an offense, but also the ball skills, the hand-eye coordination. It's a guy that you say, I got to give Trey a shot. I got to give him a chance because he can separate not just with his speed, but separate at the catch point and getting and using his verticality and his leaping ability up in the air. But also, man, you look at Jordan Watkins, Dayton Wade. These guys can make plays in the receiving game. But here's the key, Keith. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, here's the key, though, right? I'm looking at Missouri's stats, right, in rushing, and now, obviously watched the game last week too.
Yeah.
Cody Schrader, right, had 22 carries for 112 yards.
You're going right where I was going.
We're going to the running back for Ole Miss, who's probably a top 5 running back for next year's draft because he's not eligible this year, right? Maybe the top, maybe come in as the number one back.
He's probably the top back.
But this is a Quinshon Judkins game right here. And if Cody Schrader went for 112, if Georgia defense doesn't show up, Quinshon Judkins is going to go for 112 in the first half, right? Because the guy is that talented. He Zach Evans came in as a 5-star prospect. He ran Zach Evans straight to the bench, to be completely honest, right? Because
this guy round of the NFL draft.
Yep, he may be the most talented running back in that they've faced so far. And the one thing I will say about Lane Kiffin, as much as he's an offensive guru and we associate him with throwing the football, he understands the concerted effort to run the football and what that means, right? So I expect Ole Miss. That's why I'm picking them for the upset. I think they will have a balanced approach. Ole Miss will have a balanced approach and be able to get the upset. And Quinshon Judkins, he can very well lead this thing. And we talk about the point differential, DP. I think it was 1 or 2 big turnovers, right, for Missouri that kept Missouri from winning this game, right? But they were
some questionable calls by the refs too, by the way.
Yeah, they were extremely competitive in this game. So I'm that's why I'm picking Ole Miss. And obviously, an upset is an upset, right? You're fighting uphill is an uphill battle with this situation. But I agree, DP. And Georgia does have some talent with the defensive backs, right? Javon Bullard, Kamari Lassiter, right? Malachi Starks on that back end. But it will be interesting to see how this front seven handles this run game, because I think Lane Kiffin is going to get really I don't want to say tricky, but he's going to get really detailed, right, in the type of runs that we see from the I think he's going to be in his bag this week, DP.
And you're going to see a diverse run game too, because
that was the word I was looking for, diverse.
Sean Jenkins, but Jackson Dart, he's second leading rusher on the team with 467 rush yards, and he has 7 rushing touchdowns. He averages almost 7 yards a pop, Keith. But Ulysses Bentley is the change of pace guy who can not only slash and gash you in the run game, but he can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he's explosive and dynamic in open field. So you think about giving you that full, like, 3-headed monster in the run game. I'm keeping an eye on that, Keith. But Smael Mondon, talking about prospects for Georgia, Smael Mondon, the linebacker, is going to be pivotal in this game, right? Because you're going to have to stop a Quinshon Judkins. You have to stop, and sometimes you might be in a situation where he's kind of spying Jackson Dart to make sure he's not creating with his legs.
Yeah, I agree 100% with DP. We'll keep this thing going, right? And we have another.
Hold on, Keith. We got a question here. Okay. Best comparison for Ladd McConkey.
Wow.
This one's tough.
Yeah, this one is tough. And can I hold off on it? And the reason I'm gonna say that, Steven, is because I hate the irresponsible comparisons, right? Is that when we get certain specific, I guess, visuals about a player, we try to compare him visually to somebody else, right? So I'm not going to take Ladd McConkey and compare him to Adam Thielen and Cooper Kupp, right? I want to, if he compares to somebody else, right, that doesn't naturally match the skin tone, I want to be able to give that comparison. Just like I'm not going to take a 6-foot running back with dreads and call him beast mode, right? I don't want to be that irresponsible to the process, right?
Ladd McConkey reminds me of a more explosive Robert Woods, whereas like you can play him basically all over the place. So like Robert Woods, especially before, like early in his career,
early Robert Woods,
everything like that, when he was more, he was younger, he didn't have the knee injury and stuff like that. He was, quick, twitched, great route runner, strong-handed. He can win outside. He can win in stack and bunch. He can put him in the slot, put him in motion and stuff. You can do those same things with Ladd McConkey. He's tough across the middle of the field. He can win vertically, right? But he also gives you that after the catch acceleration and agility, because he's a former, well, he's not former, but he is a punt and kick returner as well. So this is it's one of Dame's dudes, man. Like, probably one of my top 50 guys. I like Ladd McConkey's game a lot. So appreciate the question, Steven.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I want to tell everybody that's listening, because we have a lot of viewers watching and listening right now, man, drop questions. If there's a discussion, there's a conversation. That's why we go live, right? Because we want to be able to discuss, talk with you guys right here in the moment. So if you have any questions about what we're talking about, whether you agree or disagree, man, let's talk about it. That's why we live on this show. DP, let's keep this thing going. Let's keep it flowing, man. We have a Utah versus Washington matchup. Like I said, another matchup with playoff implications. Now, Utah, I don't, not playoff implications, right? But they have the opportunity to upset people, right? And that's what they've done historically, right? You can ask USC, you can ask, some of these high-level opponents, right? And they come in and they just simply play tough, gritty, tough-nosed football. They make you make mistakes. They don't make mistakes themselves. And then they look at the scoreboard at the end of the game and they've won, right? So Washington, DP, I want to start with Washington real quick, because they have all the high-level names, right? When you talk about Michael Penix, Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, right? The defensive side of the football. What are you keying in on for this matchup?
Protection, starting up front, Keith, with Troy Fautanu, their left tackle, one of my favorite prospects. I tweeted about him this, I think it was either yesterday or Thursday. This is a guy, listed at 6'3", 317, 320. Someone jumped on, in the comments on Twitter, said he has a verified over 34-inch on the arm. So that's good, because if his arms are shorter than that, he's going to get that guard. Like, as a prospect, they're going to say kick him down inside. But he's got light footwork, laterally agile, strong, man. He plays physical, strong-handed guy, understands timing and with his punches and which hands to use, great latch and grip strength. And he can, and this is a guy that doesn't get a lot of talk about when we talk about offensive tackles, offensive linemen in the 2024 NFL class. But he's one of the best in the country, man. Hasn't given up a sack all season, Keith. And for him, this is a guy where I always compare tackles and corners. When you have a legit dude, you could put him on the island. And he's been a guy that has shown the ability to be put on an island. He has a nasty snatch trap, by the way. So you're talking about those bull rushes. If you're not aware, if you haven't won by that third step in terms of driving them back, he's gonna snatch trap you and put your face into the dirt. So keeping Michael Penix, that's not his blindside protector because he's left-handed, but just keeping him upright is going to be pivotal in this game, right? Like, because Utah is a physical game. A physical team. They want to run the ball. They want to play physical defense, and they can get out. They have some guys who can get after the passer, Keith. And for me, Troy Fautanu is going to be big because especially I want to see that matchup with him and Utah's top edge rusher Jonah Ellis in this game.
Yeah, okay. You went to the big boys. I'm keeping on the outside, right? I'm giving to the slimmer guys, the guys that's right around 200 pounds, not 300 pounds. And that's this trio of wide receivers for Washington. But more importantly, I want to see Michael Penix, DP. I want to see him because he had a couple outings, right? A couple back-to-back outings where it was subpar performances. And we know at the end of the day, and we know if every listener knows this, right? Michael Penix, 2 torn ACLs, right? And that kind of, I guess, added variance to his career, right? As far as when he was starting at Indiana, then the transfer, just because things were not looking upward for him, right? But he got to Washington, and then last year he's tore it up. This year he's on his way to kind of doing the same thing. But we all know that NFL general managers, right? And we've seen this where they just give guys medical red flags, right? And we know that this is the quarterback position, so you don't necessarily have to move as much, right? Like the explosive cuts are not, a part of your game as much as it would be for a cornerback or a wide receiver or something like that. But I do think, DP, that he has to play well enough to overcome even that underlying thought, right? Like that subconscious thought for some of these general managers. He has to ball out. And I don't think it's a DP. I think for him to be a first round prospect for all general managers, all NFL teams, right? He's going to be a guy that's going to have to overcome that. And he can't, for lack of a better term, like he can't limp into the end of the season, right? Like he can't just finally make it to the finish line, right? He has to dominate. He has to be dominant. And you're still in the race for everything, man. You're still in the race for, top 10 pick. You're still in the race for Heisman race, right? That's still wide open. Pac-12 championship, right? Playoff, right? So it's still, everything is still, like every moment is still a high level, high leverage moment for you, for Michael Penix. So that's who I really want to watch. And then we talked about this trio of wide receivers.
No, 100%, kid. And I'll go to probably one of the more versatile players in college football right now, Sion Vaki, the safety, receiver, running back for the Utah Utes, man. A guy that does a lot of different things for this team, right? He'll play safety, he'll line up at wide receiver and catch passes, he'll run the football and run physical, and he's talented. I don't know where he's going to end up as a prospect until they solidify at one position for him. But he's a jack of all trades, and he does everything well, and he's an impact player for them. But Keith, one of the storylines I'm looking for in this game, I don't think this is a game where you drop Michael Penix back 40 times, you know what I mean, and forget about the run, especially when Dillon Johnson just ran for almost, for over 200 bills, over 2 bills last week, right? 256 yards. But look at this, Keith. When he carries the ball 15 times or more, at worst, it's 91 yards. So against Arizona, 16 carries, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. Against Oregon, 20 carries, 100 yards and a touchdown. Against Stanford, 18 carries, 84 yards and a touchdown. And last week, 26 carries for 256 yards and 4 touchdowns. Don't forget about the run. Michael Penix, Jalen Polk, Rome Odunze, Jalen, I get it. But you got to run the big 6 foot to almost 220-pound downhill bruiser that you have in Dillon Johnson, because all that does is make your passing attack that much more potent and that much more dangerous, because you're going to get the advantageous windows because, hey, we got to walk. We always talk about, like with the NFL, when you run the ball, you got to walk that safety down, add somebody to the box. Now you got single high. Now you got one-on-one matchups. Rome Odunze is one of the best one-on-one receivers in college football, right? That's why running the ball is going to be so important for this team, Keith. And I think if they can do that, that'll be big for them, because at the end of the day, again, Utah's a physical team. They want to punch you in the mouth and want to watch your reaction. And if you don't react well, they're going to punch you again. Like, that's just what it is with Utah. They got another 6'2", 230-pound running back. They keep them in stock. All right. Just like your local grocery store, they keep these running backs in stock, man. So they're going to try to run the ball, be physical on offense and defense. Washington has to. Braylon Trice, ZTF. Listen, hard hat, lunch pail type of games. Stop the run. Then pin your ears back and get after the quarterback, right? Because especially Braylon Trice, he's been really good this year. I just want to see more impact in terms of sacks from ZTF and pressures. But both of these guys stop the run and get into the backfield.
Yeah, and this matchup, DP, is going to come down to endurance. Because I don't know if you remember the USC and when they played USC and Utah, right? USC was competitive. I believe they were winning
14-0 in the Pac-12 championship.
Yeah, even this year though, they were winning the game.
Oh yeah, yep.
And when they played and everything, and then it just like kind of unraveled, and you just seen like the consistency and like I said, the endurance of this Utah team that you have to play them all 4 quarters, right? Like, and you always talk about boxing, right? Like, it's the same thing. It's like, you know what? We're not even worrying about knocking you out in the first, second, third, fourth, fifth round. What we're gonna do is you're going to be tired coming the 9th round, right? And that's when you're going to kind of give out, and legs going to give out, and that's when we're going to go to work, and that's what they did against USC. Now, I'll be interested to see because, like you said, the run game, but Washington is kind of a passing team, right? So will this style of play be able to work against Utah, and will they be able to be I guess having endurance, right, to outlast this Utah football team that, like we say, they just gonna come in there and swing, and you got safety Cole Bishop on the back end. He's gonna come in and play some football too. So, DP, you have any other comments or any questions? Be able to talk about?
Yeah. Stephen B's hanging out with us. He said, is any concerns that Marvin Harrison Jr. is overrated due to his name in school? The Calvin Johnson level expectations are a lot to live up to. First of all, Stephen, I'm gonna start with this. He's not Calvin Johnson. Like, Calvin Johnson was Calvin Johnson was like 6'6", 230, ran the 4.3. Yeah. Calvin Johnson was an alien, all right? Like, we don't see many Calvin Johnson.
In a weird way, because of what Detroit did in previous drafts with Charles Rogers, Roy Williams, and there was another wide receiver, I believe, that they drafted. I think they went like 3 in like a 4-year span or something. Like, maybe Calvin Johnson was the 3rd. I don't know if the expectations coming out of college was this high. I think everybody knew that he was like Calvin Johnson was a physical freak, but he was also tucked away at Georgia Tech and in that triple option offense, right, where nobody kind of knew exactly what he was going to be, if he was just a vertical threat, right? Like the sound and on the stat sheet or just on the measurables, right? Calvin Johnson looked good, but I don't think anybody expected him to be this dominant, right? So I would say no. And to your point, DP, that they're different players stylistically. But to answer your question, is Marvin Jr. overrated due to his name? I don't think he's overrated. And listen, and I'm an LSU guy, right? And we have an LSU guy in this draft class. So I would have no problem with putting Malik Neighbors at wide receiver 1 at this moment. But no, Marvin Harrison Jr. is not overrated. When you watch him, he fits and checks all of the boxes. And if you're talking about overrated, to what extent, right? Is he going to be the best NFL wide receiver ever? That's still to debate, right? We don't know that. Nobody knows that. Who's throwing him the football, how long his career happened, injuries, things like that, right? But if you ask, is he as good as coming out of college? Is he as good as, Julio Jones and your AJ Greens? And then you jump to your Jamar Chases, Sammy Watkins went top 5 at one point. If you're asking if he's deserving of a consideration of being a top 3 wide receiver prospect, the answer for me is yes. And I don't think that part is overrated.
No, not at all. I'm with you, Keith. And I think he like the names you just listed, MHJ is in that bucket, man. The route tempoing, the route running, the versatility of playing outside in the slot,
big moments,
ball skills. Like he's a total package, man. Hand-eye coordination, separation, on grass, in the air. Like, this is a guy that you say, you know what? Let me isolate it. He did that last week, Keith. He had 4 catches for like 35 yards, and 2 of his catches were touchdowns in the red zone, fade routes. He mossed the guy the first time, and then it was back shoulder, just body control coming back to the football. So no, he's not overrated at all. I think, like I said, I'm not putting that Calvin Johnson stuff on him, like, because people, I guess, to some context, I think Keith, people are trying to say he could be a Calvin Johnson type of player once he gets to the NFL. But Calvin Johnson is, even though MHJ, I think, has like hit 21, 22 miles per hour on the GPS this year, Calvin Johnson was just such a different type of freak athlete for 6'6", 230, 240 to run as fast, to jump as high, the size, everything was just different, man.
Yeah, it's just we may never see.
Could he be Julio? Yeah.
Yeah, we may never see another Calvin Johnson, right? It's just like how LeBron moves at 6'8", 260, right? It's like you just don't. Those are once in a lifetime type situations, right? Yeah, you just don't get that anymore, man. But DP, man, I want to wrap up today's show, man, saying thank you. Shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us a Saturday morning. You can see us each and every Saturday morning. There's one other prospect that we didn't mention. I want to just throw his name out there, offensive tackle for Georgia, Amarius Mims, potential top 20 prospect.
I hope he's healthy because I know he's been hurt.
Yes, he's playing. He's playing now.
Let's go.
He'll be playing against Ole Miss. So just wanted to tap that in real quick. So like I said, our draft friends, draft community, guys to look out for. This is a guy.
The whole Georgia offensive line, by the way, guys. Just watch the whole Georgia offensive line.
Yep, man. But I want to say, man, thank y'all for tapping in, man. You like what we say, man. Y'all could comment, talk to us. You can find me on Twitter, X at the talent code. You can find DP Damian Parsons on X at DP_NFL. Man, y'all have a good Saturday. Go get your food, drinks, enjoy, spend time with family, spend time with good people.